He loved her, yet he buried her alive, not because he wanted to, but because poverty, mockery, and desperation drove him into the arms of darkness. On the seventh night, he whispered to her faint, dying cries, "You are the reason I did this." What he didn't know was that the grave he dug for his wife would one day become the doorway to his own destruction. Welcome to Folktales by Chisom, where African stories breathe with suspense, mystery, and unforgettable lessons. Tonight's tale is a chilling story of love, betrayal, and a haunting revenge. Stay with us till the end. The cock crowed at dawn, its sharp cry piercing through the silence of the small Igbo village. In a mud house at the edge of the settlement, Chike stirred on his raffia mat. The room was dim, the only light coming from the small hole that served as a window. The air smelled of smoke from the previous night's fire and of hunger. He sat up slowly, rubbing his tired eyes. His stomach growled, empty as usual. On the other side of the room, his wife Amaka was already awake, tying her wrapper firmly as she prepared for another day of survival. Her face, once gentle and full of admiration for her husband, now carried lines of worry and irritation. "Chike," she said sharply, not looking at him, "are you going to the bush again today? Or will you sit at home and wait for me to bring food, as usual?" Chike sighed deeply. He loved this woman, but her words pierced him every morning like a knife. "Amaka, I will go," he said quietly, picking up his worn-out cutlass. "Maybe I can find someone who needs land cleared, anything to earn something." Amaka turned to him, her eyes hard. "Every day it is the same story, yet you return with nothing. Do you think empty promises will feed me? Will they clothe me? Look at Ozoamena, your friend. He has built a new house in the village square. His wife wears gold. And me? Look at me. I am wasting away beside you." Chike's chest tightened. He stood there, silent, gripping his cutlass so tightly his knuckles turned white. Ozoamena. Always Ozoamena. His childhood friend who now drove through the village in a shining car while he, Chike, still walked barefoot, his feet hardened from years of labor. "I am trying, Amaka," he whispered, his voice breaking. "The gods know I am trying." Amaka scoffed, tying her headscarf tightly. "Trying is not enough. A man who cannot provide is like a shadow, always present but useless." The words stung. They lodged in his heart like thorns. Without replying, Chike stepped outside, the early morning mist settling on his skin like cold tears. He could hear distant laughter from neighbors, children chasing each other barefoot. His own compound was silent, lifeless. The day was long and unforgiving. Chike roamed from one farm to another, offering his strength. Some farmers shook their heads. They had no money to pay. Others mocked him openly. "Ah, Chike the strong man with an empty pocket. Go back home and let your wife feed you." By sunset, Chike returned empty-handed. His cutlass dragged behind him as though it too had grown weary of his hopelessness. At home, the sight that met him broke his heart further. Amaka sat outside with a tray of roasted groundnuts she had taken to the market. She had managed to sell most, and with the little profit, she bought Gary for their supper. When Chike entered the compound, she eyed him coldly. "So, nothing again today?" He nodded slowly. She clapped her hands in mockery. "Wonderful! The great Chike, known for his strength, cannot even provide ordinary palm oil. Tell me, are you truly a man? Or have the gods cursed you?" Chike's mouth opened, then closed again. His throat burned with words he could not say. Instead, He sat quietly on the wooden stool, watching his wife pour Gary into water. That night, as the lantern flickered, Chike lay awake on their mat, staring at the ceiling. Beside him, Amaka turned her back to him, her breathing deep with sleep. But her earlier words echoed in his mind like drum beats. Look at Ozoamena, he has built a new house. And me? Look at me. He remembered their wedding day years ago, how Amaka had danced in joy, her eyes shining as she vowed to stand by him through thick and thin. Where had that love gone? Had poverty eaten it away? He turned to her sleeping figure and whispered into the darkness, Amaka, I love you, but your words are killing me. His chest tightened with shame. He felt small, useless, and powerless. But somewhere deep inside him, a dark thought began to stir. Maybe Ozoamena's wealth did not come from hard work. Maybe there was another way. The days dragged by, each one heavier than the last. The sun rose, burned through the sky, and sank into darkness. But nothing in Chike's life changed. Hunger continued to gnaw at his stomach. Shame continued to eat at his pride. By the third week of Amaka's constant mockery, he felt like a man walking around with stones on his chest. Even neighbors had begun to notice the cracks in his marriage. Women in the village whispered loudly enough for him to hear, that Amaka is wasting away with Chike. She would have been better off with someone else. But poverty is truly wicked. It destroys love like fire destroys straw. Their words burned him inside. One evening, Chike sat under a mango tree, his cutlass by his side. He had spent the entire day looking for work, but no one had hired him. His friend Ozoamena, the wealthy man Amaka always spoke of, strolled by in a gleaming car, the kind that turned heads in the village. Ozoamena wore a gold wristwatch that caught the sunlight flashing brightly. When Ozoamena stepped down, the children gathered around him, admiring his car, touching it as though it were a sacred object. His wife, dressed in expensive lace, emerged with bags of food from the city. Chike watched in silence, his throat dry. He thought of Amaka's words. Look at Ozoamena. He has built a new house. And me? Look at me. That night, Chike could no longer hold himself back. After Amaka fell asleep, he left their compound quietly and walked to Ozoamena's grand house, his heart pounding with both shame and desperation. Inside the compound, Ozoamena and Obina, another wealthy friend, were seated in the open veranda. A lantern burned brightly beside them. The smell of roasted goat meat and the laughter of men with no worries filled the air. When they saw Chike, they smiled knowingly. Our brother Chike, Ozoamena said, rising to shake his hand. You have finally come. Chike forced a smile. My brothers, I am tired. I am tired of being mocked, tired of seeing my wife suffer. What is your secret? How did you rise from nothing to this wealth I see with my own eyes? The laughter between Ozoamena and Obina deepened. They exchanged glances, the kind of look men share when holding a forbidden truth. Obina leaned forward, lowering his voice. Chike, do you truly want to know? Because once you know, there is no turning back. Chike's palms sweated. Tell me, I am ready to do anything. Ozoamena poured palm wine into a calabash and handed it to him. Drink first. You will need courage for what you are about to hear. Chike sipped, his throat burning. Then Ozoamena's voice dropped to a whisper. We belong to something greater than ourselves, a society of men who have been given wealth and power by the gods of the night. But wealth does not fall from heaven. It comes with sacrifice. Chike's heart skipped a beat. What kind of sacrifice? The night grew silent. Even the crickets seemed to hush. Obina looked him in the eye. Your wife. Chike dropped the calabash. It rolled on the ground, spilling the last of the wine. His mouth went dry. What? What did you say? You must bury Amaka alive, Amaka said firmly, his eyes dark and unblinking. It is the only way. We all did it. That is the price of true wealth. Chike staggered back. His mind whirled. Amaka? The woman he loved? The woman he had married before the gods and the ancestors? No, he said hoarsely, shaking his head. I can't. I can't do that. Obina leaned closer, then remained poor. Let her mock you until the day she leaves you for another man. Let the villagers laugh at you until your name becomes a curse. But know this, Chike, we are giving you 7 days. Either bury her or the brotherhood will claim your life instead. The weight of their words pressed on him like a mountain. 7 days. Amaka poured another calabash and raised it. To wealth, he said, to power. Decide, Chike, but remember, nothing comes without a price. That night, Chike stumbled back home like a man carrying death in his pocket. He pushed open the creaky wooden door and stepped inside. Amaka was asleep on the raffia mat, her face peaceful for once, the soft glow of the moon falling across her features. She looked so innocent, so beautiful in her sleep that Chike's heart ached. He sat on the stool, burying his face in his hands. His mind screamed, how can I kill her? How can I betray her like this? But then he remembered her voice in the daylight. Look at Amaka. Why can't you be like him? Are you even a man? The words replayed in his mind, each one cutting like a blade. Rage twisted with love inside him until he felt sick. He whispered into the silence, Amaka, why? Why do you push me? Why do you mock me? If only you knew the fire you are lighting inside me. Amaka stirred, half awake. What are you muttering about? She asked drowsily. Chike quickly wiped his face and forced a smile. Nothing, my love. Sleep. She turned away and drifted back to sleep, unaware that her husband's heart was at war, that in 7 days her life would hang in the balance. The next morning, Chike could not look Amaka in the eye. He moved through the day like a ghost, his mind consumed with the choice before him. Everywhere he went, he saw reminders of his shame. Children pointing at him, whispering, that's the poor man whose wife feeds him. Elders shaking their heads as he walked by. Poverty has reduced him to nothing. Amaka herself loud in the market, telling other women how she carried the burden of the home alone. By evening, Chike felt the walls closing in. His friends' words echoed louder. Bury her or die. That night, he sat outside staring at the graveyard of stars above. The wind whispered through the banana trees at the back of his compound. He imagined the sound was the voice of the cult, reminding him, 7 days. He clenched his fists. His breath trembled. For the first time in his life, Chike prayed not for food, not for wealth, but for clarity. But the gods were silent, and deep inside, he knew his life, his love, his very soul had entered a path from which there was no return. The night after meeting Amaka and Obina, Chike barely slept. He tossed on the raffia mat, his body next to Amaka's, but his spirit far away. He heard the owls hooting in the distance and the rustle of wind against the thatched roof. Yet all he could think of were the words, 7 days. Bury her or the brotherhood will claim your life. 7 days. He turned to look at Amaka. Her chest rose and fell gently as she slept, her face soft in the moonlight. For a moment, he remembered the girl he had married, the laughter, they once shared, the way her eyes danced with love when they were young and full of dreams. But then he heard her mocking voice in his mind. "Look at Ozoamena. Why can't you be like him? Are you even a man?" The memories clashed in his chest like two warriors locked in battle. His love for Amaka pulled one way, while his hunger for wealth and fear of death pulled the other. The next morning, Chike walked to the village square like a man carrying a heavy burden. He saw Obinna from afar, leaning against his shining car, surrounded by boys who wanted to be like him. Obinna caught Chike's eye and raised 7 fingers with a sly smile. 7 days. Chike felt his throat close. He turned away quickly, but the reminder sat heavy in his heart. That night, Amaka cooked watery soup with a handful of bitter leaf. She pushed the wooden plate toward him and hissed, "This is all I could get. Chike, do you not feel ashamed? Other men are bringing meat, fish, even rice to their homes. But you bring nothing but an empty belly." Chike clenched his jaw. "Amaka, must you always remind me? Do you think I do not suffer enough?" She crossed her arms. "Suffer? You? It is I who suffer. I sell groundnut firewood and still you eat from my sweat. You are a disgrace." Her words stabbed him so sharply that his hands trembled. He wanted to scream, but instead he swallowed his pain.
On the second day, Chike tried to distract himself by going to the bush to cut firewood. He swung his cutlass with wild energy, each strike a desperate attempt to silence the voices in his head. But no matter how hard he worked, the thought never left him. Bury her or die. By the time he returned home, sweat drenched his body. Amaka stood outside with her friends, laughing loudly. When she saw him, she pointed, "There goes my husband, the great farmer who farms nothing. Tell me, Chike, did you at least bring us a grain of rice today?" Her friends chuckled. One of them whispered loudly, "Ah, Amaka, you are suffering. Oh, if it were me, I would have married a man like Ozoemena. Not this one." Chike's face burned. Shame pressed on him until he could barely breathe. He walked into the house without a word, but in his heart, a dangerous seed was taking root. By the third day, he could no longer sleep soundly. He woke up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat. The cult's words haunted him. He went outside and stared at the earth, dark and silent under the moon. The idea struck him for the first time. I could dig the grave now, just in case. His hands shook as he fetched his cutlass and hoe. Slowly, behind the banana trees at the back of his compound, he began to dig. The sound of the hoe striking the ground echoed like thunder in his ears. Sweat poured down his face though the night was cool. Every strike felt like betrayal. Every shovel of earth felt like a part of his heart was being buried. By dawn, he stopped, breathing heavily. His hands blistered. Before him yawned a shallow pit, not yet deep enough to hide a body. He covered it with banana leaves, trembling. When he returned inside, Amaka looked at him suspiciously. "Where were you?" Chike forced a smile. "Just outside thinking." Amaka frowned. "Thinking won't feed us." On the 4th day, Chike avoided everyone. He sat under the mango tree, staring at nothing, his eyes hollow. His neighbor, Mama Ifioma, approached him with pity. "Chike, are you all right? You look like a man carrying death." Chike forced a laugh. "I am fine, Mama Ifioma. Just tired." But in his heart, he was breaking. That night, Amaka insulted him again. She threw a wrapper on the mat and shouted, "Sometimes I wonder if you are even a man. Even Obinna's younger brother, who is half your age, is rich. Yet me, I wasted my youth marrying you." The words hit Chike like heavy blows. He buried his face in his palms, hot tears spilling. He whispered to himself, "Amaka, do you not know the fire you are kindling?" On the 5th day, something happened that nearly pushed him over the edge. Amaka insulted him publicly. He had gone to the market to fetch her, and when he greeted her friends, she snapped loudly, "Don't mind him. He is my husband. but I am the man of this house. I feed him. Without me, he would have died long ago." The women laughed. Some men nearby shook their heads. Chike froze, humiliation burning through his blood. He stared at Amaka in disbelief. She had mocked him before, but never in front of the whole market. That day, he walked home in silence, his heart as heavy as stone. That night, he stared at the shallow grave. He stood there for a long time, breathing heavily. His hands itched to finish it. On the 6th day, Ozoemena sent a messenger to remind him, "Tomorrow is the last day." Chike's hands trembled as he held the message. His heart pounded in his chest like a drum. That evening, Amaka cooked yam porridge with palm oil. As she placed it before him, she mocked, "Don't think this is your doing. I sold firewood to buy this yam. If you were a real man, we would be eating meat." Chike looked at her long and hard. His hands clenched around the wooden spoon. His jaw tightened. Inside, something snapped. That night, he went to the shallow grave and dug it deeper. By dawn, it was ready. The final day arrived like a thief. Chike woke up trembling. Amaka prepared to go to the market again, humming as she dressed, unaware that her fate had been sealed. Chike watched her in silence, his eyes empty. The words of the cult echoed louder than ever. "Bury her or die." His love battled his fear. His guilt battled his shame. But when he saw Amaka laugh and say, "Chike, maybe today you will prove yourself useful," something inside him hardened. That evening, he bought palm wine on his way home. The plan had begun. The 7th day had arrived. The morning sun rose slowly, casting golden rays across the thatched roofs of the village. Birds sang. Children laughed as they ran along the dusty paths, and women balanced firewood and water pots on their heads. To everyone, it was an ordinary day. But for Chike, it was a day of death. From the moment he opened his eyes, he felt the weight of doom pressing on his chest. The shallow grave at the back of his house, freshly dug the night before, lingered in his mind like a dark shadow, waiting to swallow him whole. Amaka hummed a song as she swept the compound, her wrapper tied tightly around her waist. She was in good spirits, unaware of what fate was awaiting her. When she looked at Chike, who sat silently on the wooden stool, she teased him as usual. "Are you going out today to look for work, or will you sit here again and let me carry the family?" Her words, once painful, now felt like fuel to Chike's dark resolve. He said nothing. He only looked at her with hollow eyes. That evening, Chike went into the village and bought palm wine from a local tapper. On his way home, his feet dragged heavily, as though the earth itself wanted to hold him back. In his bag was a small pouch containing the substance his cult friends had given him, a poison to weaken Amaka, so she would not struggle too much. When he arrived home, he greeted her with a forced cheerfulness. "Amaka, my love, I brought palm wine for us tonight. Let's drink together. It has been long since we shared joy." Amaka looked at him suspiciously, then laughed. "Ah, so you finally brought something today? Wonders shall never end." Chike smiled faintly and poured the wine into 2 calabashes. As he turned his back to her, his hand trembled as he emptied the powder into her drink. His heartbeat thumped in his ears, his mouth dry. He carried the calabash to her, with shaking hands. "Here, drink. Let us forget our worries for one night." Amaka lifted the calabash, took a sip, and smiled faintly. Sweet. You finally did something right, Chike." Her words stung, but he forced a laugh. Minutes later, as they sat together in silence, Amaka began to cough. Her hand shook as she placed the calabash down. "Chike, I feel strange." Her body grew weak, her voice faint. She clutched her chest, looking at him with confusion and fear. "Chike, what is happening to me?" Chike looked away, tears burning his eyes. He could not answer. As Amaka staggered to her feet, her legs buckling, Chike moved quickly. He grabbed her arm and dragged her outside. "Chike, what are you doing?" "Help me," she cried, her voice breaking. But instead of helping, he pulled her across the compound toward the banana trees at the back. The moon had risen by now, its pale light spilling over the earth like a witness to evil. When Amaka saw the dark pit and ground, her eyes widened in terror. She screamed, her voice hoarse. "Chike? No. No, what is this? Please. I am your wife." Her cries pierced the night, but the wind swallowed them. Neighbors were far away. No one heard. Chike's heart raced as he dragged her closer to the grave. His tears fell, mixing with the dust on his cheeks. "Amaka, forgive me." But she fought weakly, clawing the ground with trembling hands. "No. Chike, you cannot do this. After all we have been through, after all the years." Her voice cracked, but her eyes blazed with desperation. "Is this what love means to you? To bury me like an animal?" Chike's face twisted in agony. His lips quivered as he muttered, "You left me no choice. Amaka, you mocked me. You pushed me. The Brotherhood gave me 7 days." With a final shove, he forced her into the shallow grave. Amaka landed with a weak cry. Her body sprawled, her hands clawing at the dirt walls. "Chike, please, I beg you in the name of the gods, do not do this to me." Chike lifted the hoe and began shoveling dirt over her body. His hands shook violently, but he kept going. Each scoop of earth landed on her with a dull thud. "No, Chike, no, I am still alive. Please, please." Her cries grew fainter as the soil covered her chest, then her neck. Tears streamed down Chike's face as he whispered through clenched teeth, "You are the reason I am doing this. You mocked me. You compared me. I loved you, Amaka, but you turned me into this monster." Her muffled voice rose once more, desperate, broken. "Chike, the gods will judge you. My blood will not let you rest." Those were her last words before the final heap of soil covered her face. Silence fell. The grave swallowed her completely. Chike dropped the hoe, his chest heaving. He fell to his knees, staring at the mound of fresh soil. His hands were muddy, his tears endless. The night was silent, too silent. Even the crickets seemed to hold their breath. The first sign, as Chike turned to leave, the wind blew suddenly, carrying with it a faint whisper. It was soft at first, almost like a sigh, but clear enough for him to hear. "Chike, Chike!" He froze, his body stiff. He looked around, but the compound was empty. The banana leaves rustled, the shadows swayed, but nothing else moved. He shook his head violently, muttering, "No, it is only my mind. She is gone. She is gone." But deep inside, he knew the grave was only the beginning. The days after the burial moved like a dream. For the first time in years, Chike did not wake to hunger gnawing at his belly. Instead, he woke to the sight of unexpected wealth trickling into his life, as though unseen hands had opened the gates of fortune. It began subtly. The very next morning, a stranger from a neighboring town stopped him on the road and offered him payment to clear a large piece of farmland. The pay was more than Chike had ever held in his life. That same week, another man sold him goats at a price so cheap that when Chike resold them, he made a small fortune. Before long, money was flowing into his hands in ways he could not explain. By the end of the first month, Chike had purchased a new piece of land and built a wooden shop where traders from the city began to supply him goods. He bought new clothes, new sandals, and even a small motorbike. The villagers whispered among themselves, "How did Chike rise so quickly? Wasn't he the man who could not even afford salt last month?" Perhaps the gods have finally smiled on him. But some elders shook their heads quietly. They had seen such sudden wealth before. They knew wealth that arrived like the harmattan wind often carried a hidden curse. Within 3 months, Chike's transformation was undeniable. He built a bigger house, plastered with cement and roofed with shiny zinc that reflected the sunlight. Young men in the village began to respect him, calling him Odaglu Great Man. Women, dressed in fine wrappers, started visiting his shop with shy smiles, hoping to catch his eye. Chike, once mocked and insulted, was now admired, envied, even feared. But while his hands held wealth, his heart held torment. At night, when he lay in his spacious new room with silk curtains and bright lamps, he heard whispers. Faint, broken whispers that slithered into his ears, no matter how he tried to block them. Chike, why? Why did you bury me?" He would bolt upright, sweat pouring down his body. But whenever he looked around, the room was empty, only silence, broken by the chirping of crickets outside. Soon, young women began to circle Chike like moths to a flame. One of them, a widow named Ngozi, became his favorite companion. She admired his wealth and laughed at all his jokes, unlike Amaka, who once mocked his failures. One night, as Ngozi lay on his bed wrapped in fine cloth, she giggled, "Chike, the gods have truly blessed you. Imagine, only last year you were nothing, and now look at you." Chike forced a smile, but her words stabbed him in an unexpected way. For when she laughed, the sound twisted in his ears and became a mockish laughter, sharp, mocking, unforgettable. He pushed Ngozi away suddenly, his breath heavy. "Leave me," he barked. Ngozi stared at him in shock. "What is it? Did I do something wrong?" But Chike could not explain. How could he tell her that every woman's laughter reminded him of the wife buried beneath the soil? The haunting grew worse. At midnight, Chike often heard footsteps in his compound. Bare, dragging footsteps, moving slowly toward his window. One night, unable to bear it, he ran outside with a lantern in hand. The compound was empty. The banana trees swayed in the night wind, and the soil on Amaka's grave looked untouched. But when he lowered the lantern, he saw them. Footprints. Bare, muddy footprints, leading from the grave to his door. Chike staggered back, the lantern shaking in his hand. "No, no, this cannot be," he whispered. He kicked sand over the footprints, trying to erase them. But deep in his heart, he knew the truth. Amaka's spirit was not at rest. Weeks turned into months. Chike grew richer still. He now owned 3 motorbikes, cattle, and a shop that bustled with customers from sunrise to sunset. Outwardly, he was the most successful man in the village, but inwardly, he was a prisoner of fear. One night, as he dressed in front of his mirror, he froze. For in the reflection, he did not see himself alone. Behind him stood Amaka, her face pale, her eyes hollow, her hair dripping with soil. Her lips moved, whispering, though no sound came out. Chike spun around, but the room was empty. He turned back to the mirror. She was still there, closer this time, her hand reaching for his shoulder. With a cry, he smashed the mirror with his fist. Shards scattered across the floor, his knuckles bleeding from the broken pieces. Her whisper finally reached him. "You buried me. Chike, now I bury your peace." By now, villagers had begun to whisper again, not about his sudden wealth, but about his strangeness. Why does he walk around with eyes so hollow? Why does he drink palm wine alone at night, muttering to himself? And why do his servants leave one by one, claiming the house is haunted? One boy swore he heard the sound of a woman weeping behind Chike's house. Another said he saw a shadow digging the ground with bare hands in the moonlight. Chike ignored them, but his body grew thin. His eyes were ringed with darkness. Even his wealth could not hide the terror eating him alive. One evening, Ozoemena and Obina visited him. They found him sitting outside his mansion, staring at the ground, his hair unkempt. "Brother," Ozoemena said, "you are enjoying wealth, but you look like a man dying. What troubles you?" Chike's lips trembled. He wanted to confess everything, the whispers, the footsteps, the face in the mirror. But he remembered the warning. The brotherhood forbids speech. So he forced a smile. "I am fine, just tired." Obina leaned close, his eyes cold. "Remember, Chike, you asked for this life. The dead cannot harm you unless your heart betrays you. Keep quiet. Enjoy your wealth." But how could he enjoy it when every shadow, every whisper, every reflection carried Amaka's face? That night, as the wind howled through the village, Chike lay on his bed, clutching his chest. He knew then that he had made the gravest mistake of his life. He had traded love for wealth, and the price was his soul. The rains came earlier than expected that season. For days, thunder rolled across the skies and lightning split the heavens into jagged cracks of light. The earth around Chike's compound grew soggy, the banana leaves heavy with water, bending low like mourners bowing their heads. It was on one such night, with the wind screaming through the trees, that Chike sat alone in his grand house, staring at a jug of palm wine he had not touched. His wealth surrounded him. Golden wristwatches, new clothes, crates of imported gin stacked against the walls. But none of it mattered. For weeks now, he had been unable to sleep. His eyes were sunken, his cheeks hollow, and his heart pounded at the smallest sound. Tonight, however, the sounds were not small. From the backyard came a noise, soft at first, like the earth being stirred. A low scraping, then a faint sob. Chike froze, his body stiff, his throat dry. He knew that sound. He had heard it once before, muffled beneath the soil. Chike, Chike. His blood turned cold. The voice was clearer now, carried by the storm. Clutching a lantern with trembling hands, Chike staggered to the back of the house. Rain pelted his body as he stepped into the mud. The banana trees swayed violently, their leaves slapping the wind. He lifted the lantern toward the grave. His heart nearly stopped. The soil, the very soil that had swallowed Amaka, was no longer flat. It was disturbed, swollen in places as though something beneath had been pushing upward. Muddy streaks trailed down the mound as if fingers had clawed at it. Chike dropped the lantern, his knees buckling. He covered his ears, shaking his head violently. No, you are dead. You are gone. Leave me. But the wind carried her voice again, louder now, almost a scream. Chike, why did you bury me? Why, my husband? That night, he locked himself inside the house. But the haunting did not stay outside. At midnight, the door to his room creaked open by itself. The lantern flickered, shadows dancing across the walls. And then she stepped in. Amaka. Her figure was pale, her wrapper torn, her hair matted with earth. Mud dripped from her body onto the polished floor. Her eyes glowed faintly, burning with sorrow and rage. Chike's breath hitched. He tried to stand, but his legs refused him. Amaka, please forgive me. Her voice was low, broken, yet powerful. You buried me with your own hands, Chike. You poured the sand over my face, as I begged you. You chose wealth over love. Now, wealth you shall have, but peace never again. She moved closer, each step echoing like a drumbeat. The air grew colder, the flame of the lantern shrinking until it nearly died. Chike crawled backward, whimpering. Amaka, I had no choice. They would have killed me. You mocked me. You pushed me to it. Her eyes blazed. And so you buried me alive? Chike's chest heaved. His hand clutched his heart. He wanted to run, but his body betrayed him. The room grew darker, the storm outside raging louder. Amaka leaned down, her face inches from his, her breath cold as the grave. She whispered, slow and deliberate, You buried me, Chike. Now I bury your peace. You shall never escape me. Chike screamed. His cry pierced the storm, but no one came. He clutched his chest, gasping, his eyes bulging with terror. His body convulsed, then stilled. When the servants found him at dawn, Chike was lying lifeless on the floor. His eyes were wide open, frozen in horror. His mouth twisted in a silent scream. And beside him on the floor lay his wedding ring, caked in fresh, wet soil. The villagers whispered for weeks after. He killed his wife for wealth. Her spirit came back for him. The dead never sleep when buried unjustly. Moral lesson. Mockery may wound, but betrayal destroys. Wealth gained by blood never brings peace. And when love is buried alive, it always rises again, not to bless but to haunt. Beware of greed. Beware of anger. Beware of choosing riches over the ones you love. For the grave has a voice, and the dead never forget.